Hi, this is a video about our philosophy and process, which we call the Nippon way. Let me start with the philosophy of our investment process. There are four important points as far as our philosophy is concerned. First is, very naturally, we would want all our funds to have strong outperformance. The second is, this outperformance should be accompanied by consistency, or in a sense risk adjusted performance should be good. The third is, fund should follow the mandate. So if we have benchmark oriented funds, we should stick to the fact that we should beat the benchmark and not look at absolute return, for example. And fourthly, when we are looking at equities, we cannot focus too much on the short term. So we focus on 3 to 5 years in terms of targeting outperformance. So having spelled out the philosophy, let me just talk about what are the objectives of the processes we are following. To my mind, there are three important objectives of all the processes we've done. The first is, basically, if we look at equity funds, essentially equity funds try to create alpha in two broad ways. One is top down and two is bottom up. Now, top down is about taking calls on macro factors like interest rates, commodities, etc., taking big sector deviations. And bottom up is more about focusing on stock selection within sectors, within styles. So our view is that alpha created from top down is more unpredictable and difficult versus alpha created from a bottom up research process. So first of all, we want to increase the level of alpha which is coming through bottom up research process. The second is, if our funds are judged against the benchmark, we measure risk against the benchmark. So if benchmark has certain sectors, it has a certain style, whenever we are deviating from that benchmark, we should measure risk based on that sector, that style. That's the second objective. And third is, given that we cover a very big part of the market, we have a big investment team, these processes help a large investment team to communicate effectively with each other in a clear and consistent manner. So these are the three important objectives of all the processes which we have implemented. So now let me talk about the research side, some of the processes we've implemented on the research side. So first of all, we have a very large breadth of coverage. We have analysts specializing in small cap research, which helps us increase our expertise. And in fact, we cover more than 500 stocks, which is one of the highest in the industry. So that's the first point. Now, with a big team, we need a very robust means of process to communicate with each other. So the heart of our research process is our output systems, which basically are meant to capture what analysts want to communicate. So we have four output systems, which I will talk in detail in increasing order of conviction of the analyst. So for each stock which is rated, we give the analyst a choice of a 1-year target price or a 3-year target price, because some of the cyclical stocks, the 1-year target price is more suited, whereas for more structural stories, the 3-year target price is used. This is the first output system. The second output system of higher conviction level is model portfolio. Model portfolio is a sector neutral portfolio built by all the analysts in the team. So if an analyst is covering a sector like healthcare, for example, and if healthcare has 7% weight in the index, the analyst would populate 7% of the portfolio. So we have model portfolios for large cap and mid cap, which we measure on a 3-year basis. The third output system is a long short portfolio, because the reason why this is useful is because in this system, the analyst can communicate about which stocks need to be sold. because it's a long short portfolio. Analysts have the flexibility to short certain stocks, which is effectively a signal that they think that these stocks are overvalued. The highest conviction system is what we call super idea. We give analysts very limited number of stocks which can be categorized as super idea. The idea behind this is that ideally the stock should double in 3 to 4 years. That's the kind of return expectations. It is an absolute return expectation, which is a fairly high bar for an analyst, which is why this is the highest conviction level of the analyst. The other very important process for us is the risk rating of stocks. Now here what we do is basically for every stock, we classify it in 4 tiers of risk: A, B, C, D, A being the best and D being not so great. So essentially this risk rating is based on long-term factors of business and management. The risk ratings are broadly decided by the analyst in consultation with a set of fund managers. Now, why are these risk ratings important? I think there are 3 objectives for this risk rating. One is it communicates to the team how the analyst is thinking about the long-term factors about a stock, whether it is the long-term growth, whether it is the cash conversion, whether it is management quality, management capital allocation track record. These are the long-term factors which drive a stock, and this risk rating gives the team an insight into the analyst thought process on these long-term factors. The second is for the analyst, it is useful because in consultation with the fund manager, the analyst is able to see how stocks in other sectors fare on these long-term factors versus his perception about his own stock. So, for example, on long-term growth, if an analyst is able to see what rest of the universe has in terms of long-term growth on an average, he or she can get a better insight into their own stock. The third is these risk ratings are also used in our fund casing, which helps us to enhance the risk management of funds. As mentioned earlier, one of the key tenets of our philosophy is that we want to increase the level of alpha created bottom up and control the top-down risk or the macro risk. The fund casing is a very important tool for us for risk management of funds. What is fund casing? Fund casing is defining the attributes of a fund on 7-8 parameters. These parameters are positioning of the fund, the market cap split, active share, quality of portfolio, single stock concentration, etc. Just to give you an example, the quality of the portfolio, as mentioned, we have risk rating of all the stocks which we cover. So the stocks which have lower rating, we see in the benchmark what is the weight of those stocks, and we define a limit which is higher than the benchmark but not very much higher than the benchmark, so that the risk that the fund is taking on quality of portfolio is constrained. Similarly, when we look at single stock concentration, especially in funds which have a fairly high exposure to mid and small caps, we are defining what is the maximum weight we can have in single stock, and that is also linked to the risk rating of that stock. So in this way, the fund casing helps us to comprehensively manage the risk of the fund. Another very important part of the fund casing is style factor analysis. So the benchmark and the fund have a lot of factors. These are typically things like growth, momentum, profitability, etc. So we look at funds, how they are faring versus the benchmark in terms of a host of these factors. So we see if any of the funds has an extreme deviation from the benchmark on a host of factors, then we review it. So that is also a very important part of fund casing. So after research and fund management, the third pillar of our processes is about review. It is very important for us to monitor our funds and research for being agile about our processes. So in terms of review, one of the key initiatives we have is what we call the PDCA meeting. PDCA means plan, do, check and act. So in this, there is a monthly meeting where the entire top management of the investment team meets to review funds in detail. So whether it is about fund casing or research, we review any noticeable points about deviations, etc. And there is a set of actions prescribed in the meeting to address these deviations. The other important mechanism we have for review is a fund scorecard. Why is this important? This is important because it gives us a very objective measure about our funds. So we have two scores, short term and long term. Short term is approximately 9 to 12 months, long term is between 3 to 4 years. We have points for beating the benchmark and beating the peers. For every fund, we have customized a very objective score, which gives us a very good representation about how that fund is doing. And this fund scorecard is again reviewed periodically for us to get any red flag. The short-term score is meant to give us any red flags about the performance of a fund. We believe that this virtuous cycle of robust research, fund management and review will help us meet our endeavor of trying to generate consistent returns. Finally, both for fund management and research, one very important point we would like to highlight is that we follow a culture which is meritocratic, transparent and objective.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.